sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to end up jumping around a bit because just things come to mind, and like this might be quite the leap, but I will get you to bring it back to where you're going with this. But you're following what's happening in Argentina, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Milei, the libertarian candidate, who is now the front runner in the elections. He's in the primaries. I think he's surprised because I was out there. A lot of people thought, no, he wouldn't have the legs for it. He's only managed to capture like some of the youth, but he's a front runner. He's the favorite to win the elections now. One of his, key mandates is he wants to end their central bank, which, it's quite a thing to actually do. I mean, we've heard people talk about Ron Paul's talked about ending the Fed. A lot of libertarians talk about, ending central banks and, God knows how you do it and the process of unwinding a central bank. A lot of your work is indirectly or directly, you might say, very critical of central banks. But do you think about ending these kind of central banks? Do you think how a country could, what it would mean?
Yeah, I certainly wish him luck in that endeavor, but that's all I would say there. I wish him luck, and I wouldn't want to be the one doing it. I think it would be very difficult. And again, I'm not defending the existence of them, but there are so many things leveraged to these institutions. I mean, it's the whole economy, basically. So it's a full reset of the economy. Murray Rothbard, economist, hardcore Austrian economist that a lot of Austrians like, he said in the early 90s, there was actually a bunch of economists from my part of the world in Lithuania, free market economists, were going around the U.S. and trying to figure out what to do after the collapse of the Soviet Union. They were, that was a pretty interesting time because we're relatively decent-sized economies that were starting from scratch, like completely white sheet of paper, ending from the communist system. What were we going to do? And there's actually a video of him on YouTube where he says, well, these Lithuanians are coming around and they're not going to have a central bank. We convinced them not to have a central bank. And it's a great message. It's a great view. But at the end of the day, the Lithuanians ended up establishing a central bank because I am sure, I don't know, but I'm sure in the background, all the international institutions that say, corral around them say, okay, if you want to be a part of this, if you want to do this trade, that trade, if you want to, maybe get this little support here, you got to have this institution. And so they did. It definitely is a global, it's a globalized systemic thing right now. So if you are a country like El Salvador, who wants to, sort of make waves, or a country like Argentina in this case, which just has so many problems. Like they've gone through 5 or 6 currencies in the last 50 years alone, just like Brazil. I wish them luck, but I find it very difficult just the way that the system is so, it's just so, it is global. It actually is global, and they really do push you. Now, there's plenty of things how that could change, this multipolar world, and maybe they'd get closer to other countries that are a little bit larger, this BRICS countries, so on and so forth.
Well, I think one of the ways they'll do it, they've talked about, is dollarizing. So they don't have an Argentinian central bank, but they will still be holding to the Fed. Yeah,
and it's like, is that going to be so much better? There are a lot of people that really think that is the way to go, that just go on a dollar standard. But as we know, at the end of the day, even our very prescient Federal Reserve central bankers are still, just a group of people that are trying to plan an economy which is just unplannable, as Friedrich Hayek has always said, and as I'm a big fan of. So I am not holding my breath when someone says that they're going to do something like that. In Argentina's case, if they could dollarize, maybe it's something a little bit different, but it's a huge economy. And if they're going to dollarize and just hinge their hopes on, again, the Federal Reserve, I think you're probably going to have problems at home as well. Like, we got to worry about our pension funds and what happens if the U.S. inflation doesn't match our inflation, so on and so forth. So it's a very difficult thing to change the establishment like that. And that's why I think, as also Friedrich Hayek says, we do it in that roundabout way, which is why we like Bitcoin so much. So I don't know if it's these are such, illuminating statements for you, but that's generally what I've seen. I don't think this stuff is going to change without a big outside catalyst, which is usually how things change anyway, right?
Yeah. So maybe ending central banks is through the option to exit via Bitcoin?
I think so. And I mean, if the next best thing is what Argentina's doing, like, first of all, I don't think that like the global central banking elite would agree with this. But if it's like, okay, you can end your bank, but just dollarize, I don't think that's, it's going to be good for the dollar, but you're going to have a lot of local blowback at some point as well. So I don't necessarily see that route as anything promising.
Okay. All right. Sorry to interrupt. I'll let you carry on.
No, anytime. I mean, this is all fun for me. So we have this big line, basically, you're under 200 billion, 150 billion 50 years ago. And it's true. Not all of the central banks, I have data back then, and that's all accounted for in the growth rates and everything. It's not like I'm, it's all accounted for. But regardless, the trend is there. We have something like 200 billion, 150 billion 50 years ago. Now, 27 trillion. It's still a big number. And like I said, we're still 7 trillion higher than we were in January 2020. So they're always printing. All right. They're always printing at the end of the day. But if you want to see the makeup of this, I'll just build it out for you. So we have British pounds. Mm-hmm. This is a little less than 5%. And then the next big four, we have the Japanese yen in red there. It's about 20%. Chinese yuan, 20%. The euro, another 20%. And the dollar, another 20%, roughly, give or take. And then the last, a little bit less than 20% each if you looked at all of them, because the last, I guess it's 18% or so, is right there, the rest of the world. So the rest of the world in that light blue, it's only about 18% of the pie. So 82, 83% is the top 5 currencies. You can really see how this Pareto distribution works when it comes to this stuff. And the Argentinian peso, yes. Even using black market rates, in fact. Because you got to put all this stuff in dollars, right? So this is all in dollars. Even using black market rates is included in that light blue. So yeah, there's a lot of worthless currencies, even in the top 50. And when it comes to like really the size of currencies that would move markets, it's the dollar, euro, yen, yuan, and then the British pound is a very distant 5th.
Hey, we'll take it.
And that's how it looks. Yeah, but you're in the top 5.
Yeah. We're happy in the top 5. The correlation, is it a case of the dollar moves and everyone follows, or is it a case of global markets are just so correlated themselves that everything's correlated because of that? Or is it a case of, everyone's looking at each other and when someone reacts, everyone reacts? Why is everything so correlated?
Yeah, I think it's actually more the last example that you said. It's kind of like when someone reacts, particularly the dollar, everyone reacts. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the dollar driving everything, right? I mean, obviously China's been a story for 20 years, and yes, they're they have a lot of trade in dollars, and they have a lot of assets in dollars, but they have also a lot of assets in euros and yen on the Chinese balance sheet. So, it's an interesting question, but I would say, of course. And this is the question that's like obviously coming up with, the Ukraine war and many things. It's like, are we moving into a multipolar world? Maybe. But I would say it's more of like, there is some reaction here from a big player, and then usually everybody else follows. But you don't really see, other than maybe Switzerland sometimes or some countries, you don't really see people move in a different direction than what's happening here, right? I mean, just look at COVID. Like everybody increased. It wasn't just the dollar. Even though the dollar did a big jump, right? In the monetary base, it was something like 3.5, right? Before COVID. And then at the top, the monetary base went up to 6. So almost double, in fact. Everybody else was increasing as well. So that's it. So the point is, this is, if you look at this, yes, you can, I love the memes about, infinity over 21 million, all those things about Bitcoin. But even if you want to compare Bitcoin to a stock or to a bond or to real estate, you got to understand that that's just a relative comparison of value. It's not a native like for like monetary unit. That is actually what we're looking at here. This is really the core of the monetary system. I'm happy to present this to you, and I do it every quarter as well on my website and things, just because no No one seems to talk about it. No one reports on it. I think it's very interesting. But this is, you know, whether they want to tell us or not, this is like the core of the system, and this is the value. And so if you want to know where Bitcoin stands, actually in ranking of these 50 currencies, it is number 8. It's number 8, which is pretty wild. Okay, you only have the Swiss franc and the Indian rupee after that. Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, that's right. I counted it right. So that's number 8. Bitcoin is number 8, which is pretty wild.
It kind of looks like a Ponzi. It's clucking like a Ponzi.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a legalized system of money that they've kind of corralled everybody to be on. And like I said, Murray Rothbard was talking about Lithuanians not having a central bank 30 years ago. It didn't happen. Let's see with Argentina. I'm not holding my breath. It's a very, very powerful scheme. And even, whether you're a socialist country, communist country, or capitalist country, everybody is operating on that. I always talk about free banking as well. We don't have to do the big tirade. We did a big sidebar on that, which I like that discussion. A lot of people liked it last April. But it's important to know as well that there are many monetary systems in the past that did not have this. Okay, so Scotland, Canada, Sweden, some more relatively famous examples, but really all around the world. Like even in China, there were parts of the world that was kind of like more developed economies, and they didn't have central banks. And of course, a really modern central bank really only occurred. The Bank of England was really the first modern one. The Swedes had the first one, but the Bank of England was the first modern one in like the 1600s. And from there it just grew. So we had a very Bitcoin-like decentralized global trade, global economy. But basically, it's just even a free banking system has lost out to this sort of centralized. I could use words like cartel or cabal. I try to use them not to be too bombastic there, but it's just a centralized system that we live under. And, we have to do it. We have to pay our taxes. We have to have our passports, like you said, to go places. This is just how they do it. But the only escape hatch there, as far as I can tell, is like gold, silver, or Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is a much, as we know, a much better way to transact than those other units. But there's no other way. There's no other way if you want to talk about, getting out of this kind of a system.